my channel, Courtroom Battles. Dear friends, my name is Dr. Tushar Mandlekar and I am a practicing advocate in Bombay High Court since last 14 years. I have created this channel in order to create the awareness amongst the legal mind so that young lawyers could be benefited of the immense knowledge which is required for them to argue in the court of the law. Dear friends, if you are a young lawyer or if you have some interest in law, you should join this channel. Let us enjoy the evolution of law in this channel. Today we are going to discuss a very important aspect of the civil suit, that is written statement. We all are aware that the civil suits are filed in civil courts in order to get some relief when disputed facts are concerned. The suit can be filed for the declaration, for permanent injunction, or for the recovery of money. Most of the suits are filed for the real estate disputes. But dear friends, the most important aspect in dealing with the civil suit is the written statement of the defendant. Order 8 deals with the rules relating to the written statement. The term written statement has not been defined in the code. However, it means the pleadings of the defendant wherein defendant deals with the facts alleged in the plaint. In it, he also pleads new facts and sets up counterclaim and set off. All the general rules of pleadings mentioned in Order 6 will apply to the written statement. Who may file the written statement? Written statement is filed by the defendant or his duly authorized agent. If there are several defendants, a common written statement can be filed by all of them on behalf of one of the defendant. In such a case, it must be signed by all. As far as verification is concerned, it can be verified by any of the defendant. What is the time limit to file the written statement? Is there any time limit? Yes, dear friends. Order 7 Rule 1 provides that the defendant shall within 30 days of the date of the service of the summons file a written statement in the court. Proviso to Order 7 Rule 1, which was inserted in 2002, states that if the defendant fails to file a written statement within a period of 30 days from the date of the summons, then no written statement order can be passed. Therefore, the outer limit to file the written statement is 30 days, but it can be extended up to 90 days with the permission of the court. Dear friends, so outer limit is 90 days to file the written statement. Now the second question comes to our mind is, can the written statement be filed after 90 days? Whether Order 7 Rule 1 is mandatory or directory in nature? And what happens if the defendant fails to file the written statement in 90 days and prefers to file it after some more days? The Supreme Court in Kailash versus Nanku held that the outer limit of 90 days for filing the written statement is not mandatory. The court held that though the provision is couched in a negative language, it is directory in nature and it is permissible to file the written statement after 90 days with the permission of the court. It provides that the process of the justice may not be buried or hurried, but the fairness, which is the basic element of the justice, should be allowed. The Kailash versus Nanku, AIR 2005, SC 2441 is the landmark case for the written statement. Dear friends, there is one more landmark case named as Salem Advocate Bar Association versus Union of India, AIR 2005, Supreme Court. The Honorable Supreme Court has harmoniously construed Order 7, Rule 9, 10 and 11 and said that there can be discretion of the court to allow the defendant to file a written statement beyond the period of 90 days and even after the expiry of the 90 days. There is no restriction in Order 8 by which the defendant can be restrained not to file the return statement after 90 days. In this case, the Honorable Supreme Court held that the court is empowered under Order 8 Rule 10 to allow the defendant to file the return statement even beyond the period of 90 days. Such power can only be used in exceptional circumstances and a reason order will have to be passed. No routine order can be passed in such a situation. There are amendments with respect to the commercial disputes. The Commercial Courts, Commercial Division and Commercial Appellate Division of the High Courts Act 2015 was enacted to make special provision with respect to the commercial disputes. The Act also made certain amendments in the Code of Civil Procedure. It adds a second proviso to Orders 8 Rule 1. According to it, a suit of commercial dispute of specific value if the defendant fails to file a return statement within 30 days from the date of the service of the summons, he shall be allowed to file the return statement within an outer limit of 120 days. If the defendant fails to file the return statement even after 120 days, then the court shall forfeit his right to file the return statement. The consequential amendment has also been made in Order 8, Rule 10, wherein it is stated that no court shall make an order to extend the time provided under Rule 1 for filing the return statement. This is an exceptional case. Dear friends, the Supreme Court in SCG Contracts India Limited versus KS Chamakar Infrastructure Limited held that proviso added by the Commercial Courts, Commercial Division and Commercial Appellate Division of the High Courts Act 2015 is mandatory in nature and no return statement can be taken on record in commercial suits if it is not filed within 120 days from the date of the service of the summons. Clear, definite and mandatory provision of Order 5 Rule 1 read with Order 8 Rule 1 and 10 cannot be circumvented by recourse to inherent power under Section 151 of the Code. What is Rule 1A? What is the duty of the defendant to produce documents upon which relief is claimed? Under Order 8, rules contain that the provision regarding the manner and the format in which a statement must be written and provided for other requirement for its production. In this regard, Rule 1A states that along with the written statement, the defendant must produce the documents upon which he relies for his defense. If the documents are in his power or possession, he must immediately produce it in the court of law and must exhibit in the file by providing the list of such document specifically. If the defendant fails to exhibit the documents on which he is relying along with the written statement, then he will be restrained from producing it as an evidence in his defense unless the court permits it subsequently. This rule does not apply to documents produced and handed for cross-examination of the plaintiff or his witness or for refreshing the memory of the witness respectively. Rule 2. New facts must be specifically pleaded. It is a general rule of the pleadings that all material facts must be pleaded in the pleadings. The defendant must state all matters which show that the suit is not maintainable or the transaction is either void or voidable in nature on the point of law or the facts showing illegality and other grounds of defense. Now, what is the rule governing denial and deemed admission? Rule 3 to 5 of the Order 8 deals with rule governing denial by the defendants in his written statement, which are discussed as follows. Rule 3, denial to the specific. The defendant must deny the truth of each allegation of the fact specifically of which he does not accept the damages. Denial generally will not be sufficient. Therefore, it is not contemplated in the draft of the written statement that the defendant states generally that he denies all the allegations in the plaint, but does not specifically pointing each and every paragraph. So, dear friends, the advice here is when you file a written statement and deny the allegation, make sure that you specifically deny the contents of each paragraph and write it so differently in each paragraph. Rule 4. evasive denial. The defendant must deny an allegation by answering the point of the substance and explaining the role of the circumstances in which the transaction took place. Therefore, the defendant must not just answer or evade the effect of the paragraph mentioned in the plaint, but must give the answer in a way that why the statement would never affect him by telling the circumstances that stood around the fact of the plaint. Rule 5. Specific denial. Rule 5 provides for situation when the law presumes that an admission has been made. That is, when any fact in the plaint is deemed to be admitted, the situations are A. Fact not denied specifically or by necessary implication, or B. Fact is stated not to be admitted in the written statement. So dear friends, if you are a counsel of the defendant, you have to be very cautious while drafting the written statement. You have to deny each fact in each paragraph, and that too not general denial but the specific denial. In other words, every allegation of the fact in the plaint not denied by the defendant shall be taken to be admitted by the defendant. What is the rule and what does that say? Allegation of the fact which must either be denied specifically or by necessary implication and fact not admitted. However, this rule does not apply in the case of the person under disability. This rule further specifies that in the event if the defendant does not file a written statement, it shall go ahead and pass an order against the defendant or pronounce the judgment on the facts which are alleged in the plaint. However, the court may in its discretion require any fact to be proved except by the admission, reason being you cannot admit or deny at the same time. Also, the provision of sub-rule 1 of rule 5 says not only admission but other proof also. Then the section 31 of the Indian Evidence Act comes into picture, which says that the admission is not the conclusive proof but may stop. In Badat and Company versus East India Company Limited, AIR 1964 SC 538, the Honorable Supreme Court has held that combined effect of Rule 3, 4 and 5 is that every allegation in the plaint should be traversed. Written statement should answer the point in substance. If the denial is evasive, the fact shall be taken to be admitted. As regards deemed admissions, reference may be taken of Section 58 of the Indian Evidence Act 1872. Section 58 talks of fact admitted did not be proved. Among other things, it provides that if the facts are admitted by any rule of the pleading in force, then they are deemed to be admitted. However, if proviso says that the court may in its discretion, if the required fact is required to be admitted, then take the facts otherwise. Sub-rule 2 says that if the defendant does not plead, the court shall pronounce the judgment on the basis of the plaint, but the court may in its discretion require any fact to be proved. This sub-rule does not apply to the person of disability. Sub-rule 4. Judgment is pronounced under this rule. The decree shall be drawn up in accordance with the judgment, and decree shall bear the date on which the judgment is pronounced. In Balraj Taneja versus Sunil Madan, 1999, 8 SCC 396, the Honorable Supreme Court has held that court should act cautiously on the admission made in the written statement. The court should not proceed to pass the judgment merely because written statement has not been filed. Court should see that even if the facts set out in the plaint are admitted, a judgment could possibly pass in favor of the plaintiff without requiring him to prove any fact mentioned in the plaint. If the court is satisfied that no fact need be proved on the account of deemed admission of the defendant, the court can pass the judgment where the written statement has not been filed. If the plaint contains certain disputed questions of fact which depicts two different versions, the court should require the plaintiff to prove the case. Such a situation would be covered under court may in its discretion require any such fact to be proved by the plaintiff, which is used specifically in Order 8 Rule 5(2), or make such order in relation to suit as it thinks fit. under Order 8 Rule 10. What is set off? Rule 6. Dear friends, Order 8 Rule 6 of the Code lay down the rule relating to the set off. It is not exhaustive and the Code may allow equitable set off in certain cases. Order 20 Rule 19(3) of the Code provides for such equitable set off. The term set off is not defined in the Code. It means reciprocal discharge of debts between the parties. In other words, it means a claim set up against the another. It is a cross claim whereby the defendants acknowledge the plaintiff's demand but sets up another demand of his own balance against the plaintiff. Thus, it is a reciprocal discharge of the claim or debts between the persons. When there are two mutual debts between the plaintiff and the defendant, but one debt can be settled against the another, this is called a set off. It avoids necessity of filing a fresh suit of the defendant. For example, if A person sues against the B for bill of exchange of rupees 1000 or files a suit for recovery of 1000 and B holds a judgment against A for 500, then both the claims can be set off. A will be entitled to get rupees 500 only. If you have liked my video, please like it, subscribe to my channel and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for joining my channel, Courtroom Battles. Dear friends, all your suggestions and questions are welcome in comment box. I will be happy to answer all of them. Please continue watching Courtroom Battles. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.